Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
100 million people fell in love with this film. Nobody told them what it cost the people who made it. A voice destroyed overnight on a surgeon's table. A child star dead at 21. A hotel room in New York that took everything from a man in a single moment. A comedian 50 years famous. Gone before anyone noticed he was gone. 60 years later, this is what really happened to the cast of Mary Poppins. Julie Andrews as Mary Poppins. Born October 1st, 1935 in Walton-on-Thames, Surrey, England, Julia Elizabeth Wells didn't exactly have a storybook childhood. Her parents divorced early, the home was unstable, but the one thing nobody could take from her was that voice.
Cheeky.
So precise, so naturally gifted, that her teachers used a word most singers never hear in their lifetime: perfect pitch. Absolute perfect pitch. She conquered the West End before most people her age had figured out what they wanted to do with their lives. Then Broadway, then Hollywood came calling. And in 1964, she stepped onto a movie set for the very first time and became Mary Poppins. Just like that, first film, iconic forever. She followed it almost immediately with The Sound of Music and became one of the most celebrated actresses on the planet. Then in 1997, something went terribly wrong. She underwent throat surgery to remove nodules, and when she woke up, the soprano that had moved millions of people was gone. Diminished in a way that could never be fully undone. She sued, she grieved, and then she did what Mary Poppins herself would have done. She kept going. Queen Clarice in The Princess Diaries, Queen Lillian in Shrek, and today she narrates Netflix's Bridgerton with that same effortless elegance. Dame Julie Andrews is 89 years old. She lost the one thing that made her famous and built a second legacy without it. Not many people can say that. Dick Van as Bert. Born December 13th, 1925 in West Plains, Missouri, Richard Wayne Van grew up during the Great Depression, and maybe that's where he learned how to make people laugh through the hard stuff, because that's exactly what Bert does. He sweeps chimneys, draws pavement art, does a Cockney accent that the whole world has lovingly mocked for 60 years, and somehow you'd follow him anywhere. Dick had already taken Broadway by storm with Bye Bye Birdie before Poppins. After the film, he kept going. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, his beloved television show, Diagnosis Murder alongside his own son Barry. The man simply never stopped performing. And somewhere along the way, he found something else too. In 2012, at the age of 86, he married actress Arlene Silver. She was 40. The world raised its eyebrows. Dick Van didn't care. He made a cameo in Mary Poppins Returns in 2018, danced on a desk, and proved once again that some people are just built differently. Dick Van is 99 years old, still married, still working, still the last person in any room you'd expect to outlast everyone else, and yet here he is. David Tomlinson as George Banks. Born May 7th, 1917 in Henley-on-Thames, Oxfordshire, England, David Tomlinson was the kind of actor who could make you feel sorry for a man even while laughing at him. And that's exactly what he did as George Banks. Stuffy, rigid, running his household like a bank ledger, until one ridiculous, made-up word cracked him open completely.
What on earth are you talking about? Super, or whatever the infernal thing.
But David's real life carried weight that no film could have prepared. He married for the first time in September 1943, and then just 3 months later, in December of that same year, his new wife took her 2 young boys, aged 6 and 8, and jumped from a New York hotel window. All 3 of them were gone. David never visited their graves, not once. He simply couldn't. He married again a decade later to actress Audrey Freeman, and they stayed together for 47 years. They had 4 sons. The third, Willie, was autistic at a time when the world barely acknowledged what that meant, and David quietly but fiercely fought against that indifference for the rest of his life. He kept working with Disney, kept building a life that had every reason to collapse but didn't. David Tomlinson passed away peacefully in his sleep in 2000 at the age of 83, a man who buried grief so deep it never had a name.
Confound it, Banks, I said, do you have anything to say?
Just one word, sir. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
And still showed up every single day and made people laugh. That takes something most of us will never fully understand. Glynis Johns as Winifred Banks. Born October 5th, 1923 in Pretoria, South Africa, Glynis Johns came into the world already surrounded by theater. Her father, Mervyn Johns, was a well-known actor, and it seemed like the stage was simply in her blood from the start. What nobody could have predicted was that voice. That husky, warm, instantly recognizable sound that made every line she delivered feel like a secret she was letting you in on.
We're clearly soldiers in petticoats and dauntless crusaders for women's votes.
She started acting in British films in 1938, still a teenager. Her real breakthrough came in 1941 when she stepped in at the last minute to replace Elizabeth Bergner in 49th Parallel, a decision that quietly changed everything. By 1960, she was earning Oscar nominations for The Sundowners. The woman had range that most actors spend entire careers chasing. As Mrs. Banks, the suffragette wife too busy campaigning to notice her household unraveling, she brought such genuine warmth and comedic timing that you loved her even when you probably shouldn't. Later, she appeared in Cheers, and in 1995 acted alongside Sandra Bullock in While You Were Sleeping. When Olivia de Havilland passed in 2020, Glynis inherited an unexpected distinction. She became the oldest living Academy Award nominee in an acting category. Glynis Johns is 101 years old, still the oldest living Academy Award nominee in an acting category. Still here when almost everyone she ever worked with is gone. Some people just refuse to be a memory. Karen Dotrice as Jane Banks. Born November 9, 1955 in Guernsey, Channel Islands. Karen Dotrice arrived in Hollywood practically through the front door. Her father was actor Roy Dotrice, and her family already moved in the right circles. But it wasn't connections that landed her Jane Banks. It was Walt Disney himself. He saw something in her and personally cast her while the rest of her family was still in the States. She was 9 years old when Mary Poppins came out. Wide-eyed, sensible, a little braver than she looked, exactly like Jane. 3 years later, she was back alongside co-star Matthew Garber in The Gnome Mobile. But that production didn't go smoothly, and something shifted. They lost touch. She drifted away from acting, came back briefly for Upstairs Downstairs in the 70s, then quit again in 1982 after The 39 Steps, choosing motherhood over the camera. 3 children, 2 marriages, a quiet life, deliberately chosen. But Mary Poppins never fully let her go. She said she still gets teary-eyed watching it. And in 2018, she came back for a cameo in Mary Poppins Returns, because some things you just don't walk away from completely. Karen Dotrice is 69 years old. She walked away from Hollywood before Hollywood could walk away from her, raised 3 children, lived quietly, and never once seemed to regret the choice. That's its own kind of win. Hold on, we're not even halfway through. If you're not subscribed yet, do it now, because the second half of this cast is where it gets interesting. Matthew Garber as Michael Banks. Born March 25, 1956, in Stepney, London, England, Matthew Garber was the kind of kid who just had something. Disney's casting directors saw it immediately, not in what he said during auditions, but in how he moved, how he'd scrunch his nose or brush his hair back without even thinking. That natural, unforced physical presence. You can't teach that. Either a kid has it or they don't. Matthew had it. He and Karen were a perfect pair on screen. She the composed, cautious older sister, him the adventuring younger brother charging headfirst into whatever trouble London had to offer. They became real friends, and then, after the Gnome Mobile, they simply lost contact the way people do when a project ends and life moves on. Matthew had plans. He was going to come back to acting. He talked about it, worked toward it, but before any of that could happen, he contracted hepatitis and didn't know it until the infection had already spread to his pancreas. There was no coming back from that. On June 13, 1977, Matthew Garber died in London. He was 21 years old. In 2004, Disney named him a Disney legend posthumously. His little brother Fergus accepted on his behalf. 21 years old. Some people never get enough time, and the ones who deserved it most always seem to be first in that line. Hermione Badley as Ellen the Maid. Born November 13, 1906 in Broseley, Shropshire, England, Hermione Badley had been performing since the 1920s, survived wartime London, and built a career on playing characters with exactly the kind of frazzled, good-hearted energy that makes you root for someone the second they walk into frame. As Ellen the Maid, perpetually bewildered, perpetually loyal, she gave the Banks household its warmth from below stairs. A smaller role, yes, but Hermione Badley was not a small presence. Earlier in her career, she'd earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress for Room at the Top in 1959, one of the shortest nominated performances in Oscar history, just over 2 minutes of screen time. That's the kind of actress she was. Every second counted. Later, she became a beloved fixture on American television, most notably as Mrs. Naugatuck on Maude throughout the 1970s, a role that introduced her to an entirely new generation of fans. She worked steadily, loyally, right up until she couldn't anymore. Hermione Badley passed away on August 19, 1986, in Los Angeles. She was 79 years old. 2 minutes of screen time once got her an Oscar nomination. 79 years of living earned her something harder to name, but you know it when you see it.